What's going on, guys? So in this video we're going to complete the FDL 3 full auto tail. Let's go. There's not too many parts left over. This is exciting times. This is going to be complete. Just a word of even when we do complete this thing, the mic review that I showed you in a previous video, how to flash. This one is DOA. A little background about what happened with it. I flashed it. The flash was successful. I put it into this. I hooked this up to a power supply. I hooked the these wires up to here. Here's where I hooked into the power supply, and I flipped the switch, and the FDL operated. You could hit this, the motors would spool up. You could feel the pusher was moving. All these buttons on the side here would move, but the screen was black. So I did what anybody naturally would do. I says, well, maybe the flash is bad. So I went back and flashed it again and again and again, and eventually I bricked it. It will no longer try to flash, and the screen still never ever once in my ownership of this came on. So I know it's a thing. So I reached out to the company, and their ultimate suggestion was, oh, go visit the forums. And to that I shake my head, you know, face palm. So I went to the forums, and there, lo and behold, there was another user with the same issue. And what did they do? They replaced it for him. So I emailed them back. I'm currently recording this on the second day of the new year, 2020. Happy New Year, guys. Welcome back, by the way, to all you new people. Welcome to the channel. I appreciate the support. I woke up to like 7 new subscribers in a day, and then that following day there was like 4 more. So wow, things are clearly happening. Just please, you know, it's exciting. It's very exciting. So anyway, back to this. So I'm awaiting their email. I assume they weren't working yesterday, and a small assumption of maybe they're not working this week. So as soon as I know what's going on with that, I'll record another video and get this thing working. So that sucks for now, but it is what it is. It's electronics. It happens. It's just disappointing that this has been a problem with them since like 2014, I think, is as far back as I was reading. They were having trouble with these things, and it looks like they did a mass, not really a mass recall, but they were scrambling to get good ones out to people after they had shipped bad ones. So maybe they accidentally found that old box of bad ones and are shipping them back out. I don't know. I don't know. That's all speculation. So anyway, on to the build. For this step here, we're going to start with this. I believe they call this the mag block. And if we look right down the side here, you can see it's cut rounded, and that is for a spring. So to do this, we're going to take our spring and feed it right through that hole there. Of course, this is one of those things that's easier said than done. I have here a little pick tool that I'm going to persuade it with. And just like that. Okay. So this next part, we're going to want to put all these parts together. This is a magazine catch, and the magazine comes up this way, and then this locks into place. So we want this ramp to go down and to the left of your screen, just like this. We're going to take our pivot. You notice it's got kind of a keyed section. The keyed section is going to go up, and then there's a right and a left, but it doesn't matter which is which. We're going to place this in the base of the rear hull in the magazine catch. Okay, so we got our pivot and our magazine catch. Next, we're going to take our lever. And you'll also notice there's a keyed section. This is going to go up towards you guys. and that's going to go in this first hole right there. Place that in just like that. Okay, we have those two items. Now we're going to take our link, and if you notice at the back here, there's kind of a ramped up section. We want this ramped up section to kind of face that direction if we're holding this like this. And this guy has a hole in the back, and we're just going to slide this over the pivot like this. Just like that. Okay, so that's our whole assembly there. And again, if we're looking at this whole thing like this, the ramped up section is facing up that way, and the ramped up section here is facing this way, that way. Okay, so next we want to take our magazine housing, and if you notice, this spring interferes with where the pivot's going to go. So we're going to use a hook tool to pull that back. What I'm going to do is place this in a position where the lever is kind of in its hole, kind of, but everything is just kind of seated like that. So I have pressure on it, and with a little bit of wiggle, I can seat it into its position there. I'm going to take my hook tool and route it behind the pivot here, and I'm going to pull this all the way back to about here. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that. This is easier said than done, and we might take a try or two. What you want to do is get the hook tool to line up in that channel, and then once you get it, you can go ahead and just kind of wiggle all the stuff until it seats. Once you do that, you can release the spring, and then it sits nicely on the magazine catch there. And as you can see, with very minimal effort, this guy pops right back out. And that's all it takes to put that together. So here's a nice close-up look as to how everything is set up. And as you can see, if I push this link, this whole thing operates. And if I push this lever, this whole thing operates. And it's not quite flush. As you can see, my finger is kind of catching. We'll, if we need to later, we can shave this or hit it with a deburring tool. I'm not going to do that now. I want to preserve my options. I don't think it needs to be done, so I'm not going to do it. Is basically what it comes down to. So for this step, we need they call this the underbody. We're going to need the handguard, and we're going to need the magazine catch that we just put together. We're also going to need the paddle, but we're going to save that to last. So we're going to put that guy right over there. Okay, so a couple things to note here. This guy, we're going to put the magazine catch right in here. As you can see, there's a nice little slot right there. And the other thing to note, right down the bottom, you can see there it is. There's a hole here. That hole is where this link is going to go through. And if you look on this handguard, there's a hole right here. The handguard has to go on before you put the magazine catch in. And the reason for that is because of this hole and the way this goes into the underbody. So the underbody, as you can see, underbody, underbelly, whatever, it's got this rounded hole, and then you can see that hole there where the this hole lines up with. So we want to follow this angle here and take your handguard and just shove it right in there. Once it's in place, you'll feel it bottom out, and then you can see that hole lines up perfectly straight through. So what we're going to do next is take our magazine release, and we want to line up our link with that bottom hole and just slide it straight in there. And as you can see, there's a hole right here. We're going to line that hole with that right there, just like that. Once you get that in place, take I believe this is a 1-inch 6x32 screw. Go ahead and run that in, and I'm going to turn that with a number 1 Phillips. Okay, so once we get our screw in there, go ahead and make sure this lever works, operating the mag release. And then if you can fit your finger in there, or grab a screwdriver or something and press the link, make sure that link is operating. Or you can take this paddle, and we'll do that right now. If you notice, this paddle's got a triangle section, that's the top, and that's also denoting the front. Got this little concave section here that goes towards your trigger. And then down the bottom we have this point, and we have this rounded section. This rounded section is going to go right into this little hole here, cut into the handguard. So that just slides directly straight down into it, just like this. Okay, and then now as you push the top of this towards the front of the FDL, you'll see the magazine catch is operating and the lever is also moving. So you can release the magazine with either this or with the paddle. Now this paddle see, the paddle will fall out until it's mated with the upper section of the blaster. So let's go ahead and grab that. And as you can see, we want the motor wires to run inside of this channel, as we've done earlier. If you don't, you stand the chance to pinch it with this next step. We also want these motor wires in the front. The reason for that is because we've got this nice big hogged out flat section here, and that will allow the motor wires to not get caught. Now the motor fits in here relatively loosely, so there's not too much to worry about. Just pay attention to what's going on there. So we want to go ahead and make sure none of these wires are going to get caught. And just go ahead and push the, all I'm doing is pushing this up. Pay special attention down here. There's a little slot. I'll show you there. There's a little slot right here that we're putting the base of this handguard into. And it's pretty self-explanatory when you've got this in front of you, but maybe you're just watching this for the first time. And you don't have one to see. So that's what we're looking at down there. And then that seat's in there just like that. And then this guy, if I didn't show you, there is a matching triangle section to the top of this paddle here. So that's gonna line up, and that will capture that paddle once it's in place. Just like that. So now this paddle's not coming out, and we can operate the magazine catch just like that. So the next thing we want to do is grab two 6x32 screws, and these I'm going to put right here in the handguard, and that's going to hold the handguard, and these go right into the scales here, or at least that's the hope. There we go. So you might have to push this. I just grabbed the base of the trigger housing here and push this in place, and that aligned the holes. It was clearly not aligned before. So go ahead and run that screw in there. And again, this is cold plastic for me, so I'm gonna go snug, not tight. And then as you can see, the other side also has one, and we're gonna put that one there. So run that in. So those two screws are in. The handguard is in place. Be sort of careful with this because there's really nothing holding this part. There stands a chance that you could possibly maybe break this because there's nothing holding this in place right now. Once this is screwed to the nose, that's not an issue, but just know that's it's kind of a weak point in the system that I see. Whether or not people have trouble with that, I don't know. Just something that I see from a hardware standpoint. So the next thing that we want is the cap mid. I don't know why they just didn't call it the battery cover, because that's exactly what it is. We have the battery cover. So there's two versions of these. This one is the no nut version, or I'll call it the female version. And there is a nut version where you have to stop the print, mid-print, install nuts, and then resume. I'll show you how to do that right now. So if you haven't done it already, go over to the GitHub page for the FDL3. All the links for these will be in the description below. Come over here to the main page and clone or download. We want these STL files. Put those on a place on your computer where you're going to remember where they are. The other thing that we're going to want is the slicer program. And what a slicer is, for those of you that don't know, is this is what cuts your object up and tells your 3D printer how to operate. So go ahead. I'm going to show you how to use Cura. There's many of them. I don't know the similarities and differences between the two. I just use Cura. So you might be able to find a similar way to do this in your slicer program. If not, this one is right here. And again, the links are in the description below. Click download, install this on your computer, and you will get a program that looks like this. So what we're gonna do here is, if we go to, these are the STL files for the FDL3, and we're gonna look at these two right here. These are the cap mid no nut and the cap mid. These are both your battery covers, and we don't need both of them, but we're gonna look at both of them right now to see the differences. Because if you look at them like this, let me zoom in a little bit and move this guy up into frame a little bit better, and zoom in this. Okay, so as we look at these, there really isn't a difference until we look closely here. You can see that there's a little bit of a gap here, and then this is all solid material right there. So this here is the cap mid no nut, as you can see, that's marked right there. And then this one here is the cap mid. This one does have a nut, and the reason, if I go over here to slice, I can show you, you actually stop the print mid-print in order to install a nut and then resume the print, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do here. If I go to preview, this is showing you the slices of where the printer is going to lay down material and how it's going to do it. And if we go down here and I take an overhead view, as you can see right here, it's starting to build the hole for the screw to go through, whereas here you can see the cavity being built for the nut. Now you would think, because a nut is let's see, 6-sided, that once this starts coming around the top, it would start rebuilding material on the right and left before it covers that center section. But if we look here, right around, this is 285, I believe. So if we go to 285, as you can see, there's no right and left angled portion here or here. It's just a straight shot. So what they thought about was, you've got that angle down there, you've got that angle down there, you've got this angle, you've got this angle. So we're just going to omit the top right and top left. And what that allows you to do is drop in a nut here, and then continue printing. So now if you notice, we go to 286, it covers over that nut flat. So it's flat here, flat here, flat here, and then you got an angle here, a flat there, and then an angle there. And that's what we need to do. Over here, as you can see, this is just the plain hole being made as the thing goes on. So if you don't feel like freezing your printer, you can print this one, the no nut version. But if you do want to install a nut, let me show you an easy way to do that, so you're not guessing as to where this is. Because let's say, for a moment, you are down here. Let's say you're at 275, right? You wait for that hole to close. Okay, great. I think that was about 270. Okay, so the hole is closing. Let me pause it here. Well, the nut's going to stick up. So now you've either got to pull the nuts back out and wait a little bit more. And let's say you get it to here. And maybe you think that's good. Maybe the nut is good, but you can't tell that it's sticking up maybe a millimeter or something like that, your print head is going to hit that, and then this whole print is going to be yanked off the bed and it's going to fail. So let me show you an easy way to do this. To do that, let's get rid of this guy because we don't need it. We're going to go back to prepare, and we're going to reslice this. And like I had said earlier, 285 on my machine is the last opening before we get to 286. 286. As you can see, it starts to cover over here. Now my settings are, I'm using 0.02 millimeter layer height. So if this is 0.3, 0.4, your layers are going to be a little bit different, but it's still easy. You can grab this bar here and just kind of gauge where it opens and closes, and then you can actually punch in a number here like I've been doing with the keyboard, 285, and dial in which layer you need to pause at. So once you figure out that layer 285, we're going to go over here to extensions, and we're going to modify the G-code under post-processing. You're going to see modify G-code. Go ahead and click that up, and then we're going to add a script. So click add script, and we're going to scroll down here to pause at height. And there are a few. You got pause at height BQ. We're just going to go to pause at height. Go ahead, click that, and now you can see there's an option here, pause at height or layer number. We're going to change that to layer number. We're going to pause it at 285, as long as I can type here. Print head X and Y is where the printer head goes once it's paused. We're going to do a little bit of retraction because we don't want this oozing, and I'm only going to go with 4 millimeters of retraction. The reason being is because I have an all metal hot end. If I go any more than that, the filament might heat up inside of the non-hot end portion of the hot end and cause a clog, so we don't want that. If you're using the stock hot end, you might be able to go with 6. To me, 4 is going to be plenty ample. We want our retraction speed, I'll just leave that where it is, 25. Our extrude amount, this is if you want to change colors. This is what you would do. You would go ahead, pick your layer, and once you change your filament, this is the amount that it's going to extrude. So if you want to get the old color completely out, depending on the hot end you use, I would say between maybe 20, 25-ish would be ample to get 100% of the old color out. Your extrude speed, I'm going to leave that alone. As you can see, that's how fast the material is extruded. Are we going to redo any layers? We are not, so we're going to leave that alone. And then our standby temperature, this is your hot end temperature, so set this for whatever you're printing at. So if you're at 210 and you are going to get to it right away, then just leave it at 210. If you think you're going to take a while, like you might be in the other room eating dinner and you might miss the thing and you want it to cool down, then set it for whatever you feel. And then this here, display text, this you can send a funny message to somebody, or do whatever, right? This is, to me, this is, if you're going to modify this G-code and send it to somebody else and you want the printer to say something, that's where you would do it. Or if you needed a gentle reminder as to what the heck you're doing, because you're absent-minded, you can leave yourself a note there. So once that's done, you can just go ahead and close that. And then if you haven't already done so here, you can set your settings and then go ahead and slice this. Once you slice it, you will see this guy here lets you know that there is a modified postscript in the G-code. So if you see that there and you're wondering what it's for, that's exactly what it's for. And now this will go ahead and print everything up to this point, and then it's going to pause. It's going to move out of the way. You can drop your nuts, and then you can hit start, and that will continue to print the remainder of this print. It's just like that. And this is how you would orientate it on the build plate. So that's how to do that. Super simple, nice and easy. And I would actually show you the printing of this, but I am out of the filament that I would print it in. I would print this in purple. PETG is my choice filament, and I am completely out of it. So I have the no nut version currently printed, so I'm gonna carry on with that. So now that you know the difference between the no nut and the nut version, a little bit as to why you would pick one over the other. The no nut version, you're threading into plastic, and that plastic will eventually wear out. On most of this other part of the build, that's not an issue because, well, how often are we taking the slide plates off? How often are we taking the grips off? But the battery plate, we're going to take off multiple times because as soon as you run down a battery, you need to put a new one in. So how many times are you going to do that? I don't know, but it's going to be often. And it might be often enough that you're going to wear this out fairly quickly. So they made the nut version. They made the no nut version because some people just don't want to do the process that I just showed you. So the choice is yours. There's no wrong decision, but you know, it is whatever it is. So this guy's just gonna seat right here. So when installing this, pay special attention. There are notches here, and then there are no notches here, and we got these ramped sections. We want the ramp to go up and back towards the back of the FDL. The notch sections are at the front, and that's just so it can mate with the nose. And there's I'll actually show you right here. This is just a pinch longer than this black part here, so that's why it's cut the way it's cut. If you're interested to build this or any of the other components, I linked the playlist in the description below. This is the 40 nose, and we'll come back to that in a moment. So before I put this battery housing on, or the battery cover on, I want to go ahead and grab the Picatinny rail. And if you notice, this has a ramped section here and a completely flat section here. The flat section goes towards the front because it's going to mate with the whichever nose that you decide to use once that's in place. So we want to put that towards the front. And again, we want to pay attention to this notch towards the front. So I'm going to lay these like this. The other thing that we're going to want is the screws. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to want is the 6x32. These are 3/8 screws. And we're just going to go through the Picatinny rail and screw them. We're going to line up with these two top holes here. And again, the ramp section towards the back, the flat section, and this notch section towards the front. And these are also going to turn with a number 1 screwdriver, number 1 Phillips head. Once you've got that complete, go ahead and just slide this in place. Again, making sure we're not going to chop these wires. As you can see, the hole lines up here. We're going to take our threaded thumb screw, and this is a 6x32, and we have 2 of these. We're just going to put this through here and screw that in place. And these are a thumb screw because this is going to be open and closed multiple times. Okay. And the first time doing this, it might be beneficial to go ahead and run a normal screw in here with a screwdriver, because these thumb screws, as they're cut in threads, they are kind of tight. So just it might make it easier for you. I'm having it's really squishing my fingers here. It's also because it's cold out. But that's it. You get the point with that. I'm not going to run them all the way in. It's probably beneficial when you're using this to run them all the way in. Okay. But again, I'm going to reprint this part, so this is just so I can complete this build and you guys can look at some awesomeness. And that does look freaking awesome. Wow. So we're missing one thing. As I stated before, mine doesn't work currently. Again, it's flashed properly, but the screen doesn't work, and now I have bricked it trying to fix it. So we put that guy in there. I'm going to leave the plastic on because I'm not sure how SparkFun is going to rectify that, as earlier stated in the video. But that is the completed 40. But that is the completed full auto tail, and this thing is awesome, absolutely awesome. All right, so now that we have our full auto tail complete, let's go ahead and mate it to the 40 nose. I am really interested to see what this thing looks like complete. So let's go ahead and remove our battery cover. Pull that off, set that aside. Go ahead and grab your nose. And for this, I'm using the 40 nose. Again, if you haven't seen how to build this, the playlist is linked below to where we solder all the boards and put this whole thing complete together. So to do this, we want to remove this upper cowl. So that's 2 screws, one on either side here. Set that aside. Those are 6 by 32 by 3/8, just in case I get mixed up with any others. There are only 2 of them. Once you get that done, pull that off and set this aside. And now we have access to the top of this. What we want to do here is grab our wiring and pull it up and out of the way. And as you can see, we've got two screw holes here and 1 screw hole here. So we're going to go ahead and line these 2 halves up. Now you can see the pusher sticking out here. The pusher is going to line up with this hole here. So go ahead and line those up using care not to squish any wiring while you're doing that. And then just go ahead and double check. Some of the wiring will run underneath there, and there's just kind of a nice little slot that it goes into, so that's nothing to worry about there. So go ahead and push this together. The next thing that we're going to want is the screws, and to do this, oops, as I throw them everywhere here, we want these are all 6 by 32. We're going to want 2 1/2-inch screws and 4 3/8 screws. And to me, it doesn't matter which ones to start with. I'm going to start with these bottom ones because it looks like it grabs into a bit more meat than just these the front 2 here. So the 1/2-inch ones go down the bottom. That, and then I'm going to flip it over and do the other 1/2-inch one over here. Just because as you put this together, you kind of feel a bit of flexing, which to me should rectify itself once you get a number of screws into it. Okay, and then we can go ahead and do these screws here. It actually felt as though that bottom screw did not bite as well as I thought it would. It almost feels like they're both stripping out with the, it's almost like they're not long enough. So looks like these actually do the bulk of the work, these top two. So this top one is not quite lining up for some reason, which is strange to me because the remaining of this is lined up just fine. So we're going to try that one more time. I think we got it. Yeah, there we go. Now it's threading in. So that hole to me is just a little off center, but this screw is screwing into it now. And the hole that I'm talking about is in that, in the barrel section there. Okay, so those two are in. Now we have the remaining two here. Put this top one in first. Okay. And what I had done there is I gripped here and then I put my thumb here and just kind of pushed the two together to line this hole up a little bit better than it was. Okay, so that is physically placed together. The next thing that we're going to do is flip this up, and if you use your stand here, which I will do, pop your stand in the magazine housing, and this sits nice and flush with the bottom of the tail end there. So now we can work on this like this. Let me see if I can get you guys some more light in there. So we're going to start here. And I'm sorry this is a little hard to see. We've got the muzzle to the left and the back stock is to the right. And what we're going to do here is we're going to start with this 3-wire. This is our ESC wire. And we've got 3 pins here to the lower side of this buck converter. And the negative is towards the back. So we want to take the black wire and face it towards the back of the FDL. We're just going to slide that in place like that. And we can line up these wires afterwards. The next thing that we want to do, and this is something that I probably want to cut a little bit shorter, probably 4 inches shorter than it is. This is the main switch. So all the way to the top of the screen here, just before you hit the input wires there for the power. We want to hook this main switch up, and that slides right in place like that. And then next we've got a positive and a negative. Remember, this one is our power wire, so I went positive with the yellow and green for ground. So the green is towards me on the left side of the FDL. So we're going to go ahead and plug this guy in just like that. So now once you get those plugged in, if you look right here, you can see this kind of notches down and around, and then there's this nice little piece here. What you want to do is take your wiring, and we'll start with the power wire. You want to put it in there and up underneath that, and that'll capture your wires. We might actually have to remove this power wire to do a few of these first, so we're going to do that. Go ahead and grab your ESC wire and your power switch wire and run them underneath there. As you can see, they're captured nicely like that. Let's zoom in a little bit there. Okay, now what I'm going to do is do the same with the power wire and get that placed underneath there, just like that. And now you can see that runs on the side there. And now I'm going to come back and plug this guy back in. So let's make sure we're doing this right. Positive to the left side of the FDL. Excuse me, positive to the right side of the FDL. Just like that. Okay, so now once those are out of the way, if you have enough wiring slack, you can actually put them in these channels here. And I have enough for one wire, which should kind of hold down the others. And then that's the wiring. Kind of not as neat as I would hope, but it's out of the way. It's not going to hit anything, and that will work. But most of all, it's not flopping around here in the battery compartment. So the next thing that we're going to do is grab our front cowl and make sure we're not going to pinch anything, and place that in place. Grab your 6x32 by 3/8 screws. Go ahead and replace them. Okay, so that's that. Now you can go ahead and take your main power leads and kind of feed them right into this guy there. And the last step, I'm going to go and put the battery cover back on, just like this. And pay special attention to this guy right here. Make sure that doesn't get caught once you're placing this. And then we want to make sure our ESC wire, or our power wire, is out of the way. And this will line up and fit fairly good there. And grab your thumb screws again. 6x32 by 3/8, I believe there. And screw those in place. Again, I'm not going to get too crazy because I got to put a battery in this. And I'm also going to reprint that part. But I've already showed you guys how to do that, so you should be all set there. Oh, so that is the completed FDL3, and this thing looks freaking awesome. Oh, wow, that was quite the build. There's still more to it that I want to cover, so we're definitely going to do that. I'm not going to leave you hanging now that this is done. This is the part of the video where I'm supposed to show you this firing up and everything working, but there's a few things that need to happen before that does. First off, the spark fun, like I told you, was broken from the moment that I bought it. The screen does not work, and now I managed to brick it trying to repair it. So, you know, whatever. They have to replace it anyways because it wasn't working. So I'm waiting for an email back from that. So that's got to be covered. I still got to cover motor directions. So I'm going to show you probably two ways to do that. One involving just firing the gun up, which is probably the more dangerous way to do it. And another, I've got a servo tester that we're going to use to check the motor direction of each individual motor. And that's also something that will probably work pretty well for testing balancing of the flywheels. Now, I'm also going to go into a little bit of how to print the flywheels. And I got to search online to see if I can find a 3D printed or make my own a way to balance the flywheels, or at least to check beyond running them and just seeing if they are in or out of balance. So there's a lot more to cover. Also, the ESCs. Some of you out there are having trouble with flashing the ESCs, and I know that USB linker, it is a pain to get that to work with the drivers, the CP210 drivers. For whatever reason, they just, I don't know, they won't work that well. So some of you are having issue with that. For now, the ESCs as they are, I believe, are flashed usually with, I think it's 32.6 currently, and they will work on their own without being flashed. The difference is the ramp up speed. That's one of the major ones. Also, the startup tones have been changed. So if you can't get them flashed, you can run them as is. Just know that the motors are going to take longer to spool up. And there's a few other changes that they've made. I don't know off the top of my head what they are. So just know that that's a thing. I'm going to revisit that in a later video. What I think I'm going to do is also show you how to flash them with an Arduino as well. I know it can be done. I'm familiar with some of the steps to do it. I haven't personally done it yet, so I got to get an Arduino and program it, and I'll show you how to do all that once I tinker around with it. It's not anything that's outside of my skill level. It's just I haven't personally done it yet. So once I get one, I'll show you how to do that. So yeah, that's the flywheels, that's the ESCs we're going to cover. The Spark Fun, again, I want to revisit that because I believe I flashed it properly. Who knows? But yeah, so I'm eager to get this thing going, but the build is complete. I'm not sure if I'm going to call that the complete build series because there's stuff that I haven't covered that I think are part of the build series that should be covered. So yeah, but it is what it is. Leave me a comment below. Let me know if you're enjoying this series. Let me know if there is anything else that you want or need me to cover. I know that I covered basically none of the printing besides the battery cover in this video. If you need to see orientations of how everything is printed, if you want me to share some of my settings that I was using for this awesome PETG, or if I should just cover what I think should be printed out of what, which, you know, that's not really a video. I could just throw that in to a printing video. But yeah, there's a lot of info to cover still, so I'll get into that in a couple of more upcoming videos in the future. So yeah, guys, seriously, thanks for hanging out and watching these videos. I really appreciate that. If you enjoyed them, if you enjoyed this series, click that thumbs up button. And if you haven't done it already, go ahead and punch that subscribe button because it's fun and you only get to do it once. And I'll catch you later. Peace.